Hey, Carrabis, does Maz acknowledge you when he shows up, when you show up for these Wednesday night, Thursday nights, whatever? Does he acknowledge you?
I walk in the room. He stands up. He looks at me and he puts that one on this guy. He truly does. He has to. Thank you, Matt McCarthy. I appreciate that.
I acknowledge you.
Thank you.
As my baseball tribal chief, Jimmy Stewart, just did so as
he
well.
He always does. That's my guy. That's my wise man right there.
Jared Carrabis, Underdog Fantasy, Section 10, Baseball is Dead, everything. You know who he
Unobstructed views,
you,
Baseball Hour.
Nesson 360. He has a million jobs. He has every job. He's the Ryan Seacrest of baseball. He has every single job out there. Presented by Blue Moon Belgian White. See, he has sponsorships too. Be sure to relax and enjoy the ball game with Blue Moon Belgian White. Blue Moon, born in a ballpark, brewed for baseball. How you been? Good? Back from Texas? Good? Everything good?
Milliken's still alive. I don't know if you saw any of the content, but basically what happened was we landed on Friday night. Saturday morning, Milliken did a cannonball in the pool and never recovered. He never recovered. I mean, he battled. He stayed with it, but he was a hurting unit for the entire trip. I tried to look out for him, guide him, protect him from himself at times, but it was a fun trip. We got a lot of content coming out from it, and it was a good time.
Real quick, though, like, how was the All-Star game you go most years, like festivities? I thought the game was good. I thought it was compelling. If you like baseball, I enjoyed it, man.
This was the first year, I think, it was the general consensus on the pod this morning that the Home Run Derby didn't feel like the main event this year. It was the All-Star game. Usually it's like the Derby, it's like everyone's excited for the Derby, and then the All-Star game is just like, and then the All-Star game happens. This year, it was, this field is kind of weak for the Derby. And then in the All-Star game, you had Mason Miller versus Shohei Ohtani.
Awesome.
Everyone was looking for that. Paul Skeens versus Aaron Judge. It was anticlimactic, but everyone was like, that's a showdown that I'm looking forward to seeing. If you're local, Jaren Duran winning the All-Star game MVP was huge. And then Shohei Ohtani, the biggest star on the planet in our sport, that guy hits a home run. So I think this was the first time in a long time that the All-Star game was kind of the main event of the event.
Good news for the Red Sox. Like, Jimmy Stewart came in yesterday and said Tanner Houck got taken deep by Shohei Ohtani. We're not talking enough about this. We're focusing on the Jaren Duran stuff. Jimmy, do you want to enumerate your take for Jared Carrabis?
I was just being a jackass for the show yesterday because we might have needed content.
Okay, Jaren Duran is a good thing. It's a good thing, isn't it?
It's a great thing. It's a great thing. I think, when you have someone like that who is homegrown, who has a great personal story, I think a lot of people can relate to it in many ways. And his come up, we've had the chance to see it. I'm sure a lot of it is private, but a lot of it did happen on the field, his struggles. And for him to go from someone where I think a lot of Red Sox fans, and I'm sure you can attest to this, you're on Twitter, a lot of Red Sox fans were like, I don't even want this dude on the team a couple of years ago. And there were a lot of moans and groans when I think last year, at the start of last year, Alex Cora was like, he's our center fielder. And everyone was like, oh, God, if he's our center fielder, this season's going to suck. The season did suck, but he didn't. Before he got hurt, he was really good last year. So we got to see flashes of it last year, and he's put it all together this year. I believe, what is he, leading the league in doubles and triples? And his wins above replacement is either on par with or exactly the same as Juan Soto,
yes,
who's about to get $500-600 million. It's been an excellent story, and it's cool that we've kind of got to see it from start to end here in Boston.
We talked a lot yesterday about how, Duran winning All-Star Game MVP and having that moment is, just another little sign, Jared, that this thing is coming together for this team in ways that nobody really expected. I didn't expect this. 2 years ago, you're right, I didn't think Jaren Duran was a big league player. I watched him nearly get into fights with fans in Kansas City. I watched him fail to track a fly ball and just stand there, and inside the home, park home run against the Blue Jays. Like, I watched all that, and I said, this guy doesn't have the skill, he doesn't have the mental makeup, he doesn't have anything, to be this. And now he's All-Star Game MVP. He's been, to your point, according to WAR, one of the top 5 players in baseball this year, tied with Juan Soto. Is this another sign that it's just kind of all coming together for the Red Sox, and are you afraid they're going to ignore it?
Well, I saw Felger said something really dumb yesterday. When he said...
Which one about the Red Sox, by the way?
He said, people don't know who Dom Smith is. People know who Dom Smith is. He's a first-rounder. But then he also said something profound in the same segment where he's like, Red Sox fans, is something special happening this year? When you have a player like Duran, homegrown, and he's one of the best players in baseball statistically, goes to the All-Star game, hits the game-winning home run, is the All-Star game MVP, and he was going to the list, I think it was, Ted, Yaz, J.D. Drew, and
Pedro and Roger Clemens.
And Clemens and Duran. Those are all names, to be able to do that. And I think the J.D. Drew year was 08, where they should have gone to the World Series if Beckett and Mike Lowell are healthy. And then the Pedro year, that was special. Like, they obviously got their asses kicked by the Yankees in the ALCS, but that was a special year too, just because the All-Star game was in Boston. It was a special year for Pedro. This is a special year for Jaren Duran. I hope that it's not like the Red Sox are going to be like, yeah, man, like Jaren Duran won the All-Star game MVP. Like, that's going to energize us in the second half. No, but it's something when you have the Netflix documentary crew documenting this season, which I think we all kind of forget at times. Like, obviously, we're all aware of it, but I think we forget at times that there's going to be a Netflix special about this entire season, following it every step of the way. So even just that, it gives you that sense of like, something has to happen, whether it's a heartbreaking, crushing finale to the season, or it's like, wow, like they documented the season where that was a very special year in Boston. It's got to be one or the other.
So I always have to ask you, because you're so tied in and you're one of the premier, you are the premier Red Sox voice out there, and you talk to people over there. So when you kind of say, yeah, like this is all coming together, and of course they should add something, should happen from this. Is that you saying that, or do they feel that pressure over there too on Jersey Street? Do they look at this as an opportunity to say, we can't ignore this, something special is coming together, this team is better than we thought, and we need to act accordingly? That I just don't have the answer to that. Do you have a sense as to how they feel?
Yeah, the answer to that question is it depends on who you ask, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. I mean, like, you shouldn't want some baseball dictatorship going on where it's like, I believe that this is what we should do and everyone has to fall in line. Like, you want a mixture of opinions. I do think that there's a mixture of opinions over there. We can all take a guess on who's who. I think that there are certain individuals over there that are like, how do we not go out and add? And I think that those are the voices that will ultimately win in the end. We were having the conversation during Felger and Maz, one of the breaks, where, I think when Craig Breslo first got introduced, he said, we're not afraid to make the big trade. Like, we're not afraid to do that. Well, it hasn't happened yet. I don't think you just have to go out and do that. But when we go down the line, and I said this to Maz a couple weeks ago, I said, Tony, can you name the prospect that was in the deal for Kyle Schwarber? Nope.
Aldo Ramirez.
Can you name the prospect that was in the deal for Steve Pearce?
Santiago Espinal.
You went back and looked.
Oh, no, I knew that. I kid you not, Jared. I wish I could remember anything important in my life. I can tell you all about Santiago Espinal and Jalen Beeks and
Nathan Eovaldi.
Yeah, Jalen Beeks for Nathan Eovaldi.
Oh yeah, I remember the Beek man. Yeah, I remember that. That one I do remember. But the everyday Red Sox fan is not going to remember these names. So it is one of those things where yes, they can add. Yes, they can add an impact player, and no, they don't have to trade from the future. They don't have to jeopardize their future, and it's not necessarily going all in. And I made this point to Tony as well, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this perspective, because I think sometimes when the Red Sox operate like this, they will look at 2024 and say, do we have a chance to win the World Series? No? All right, then we're standing pat, or we're going to trade a veteran rental to get some low A guy and whatever. It's no big deal. Like, with this team in particular, they can add to this group, increase their odds of making the postseason, and that to me has a ton of value. It's not about going out and making some huge trade and increasing your odds of winning the World Series. It's about bettering this team, because even if they don't win the World Series this year, don't you want guys like Rafaela and Duran and Wilyer and Wong? Some of these guys are going to be pieces for that, hopefully, that year that you're going to actually make a run at the World Series. don't you want them to have some postseason experience?
No doubt about it.
So that's why it's worth it to me to add, even if the goal, even if you don't have to outwardly say, hey, we're not trying to win the World Series. We're trying to win more baseball games than we lose. But, we're not exactly we're not trading for Garrett Crochet to add to the rotation. We're not going to make some huge splash, but we're going to add some guys and better this team so they can get to the playoffs.
So here's I think the helpful exercise to do for that. Let's put a name to it, right? Is Nick York, is trading Nick York worth improving this team, getting them to the playoffs, maybe you lose, whatever. Like, is Nick York worth that sacrifice? And the answer is yes. And I think if you went down the majority of their farm system, your answer and most Red Sox fans' answers, and hopefully Craig Breslo's answer would be, yeah, Nick York is worth that. Matthew Lugo is worth that. And you can trade these guys. You've got, a million left-handed hitters in your farm system. I just named 2 righties right there, but you've got a million shortstops. You've got a million outfielders. You've got a million guys who hit left-handed who aren't going to play for you next year or beyond. Is trading one of those guys to get a rental worth it to make this team better so this young group figures out how to play meaningful baseball in September and hopefully October? I think the answer unequivocally, Jared, is yes.
I'm with you on that. However, in the particular case of a Nick York, I'm not trading him for a rental. Like, I think that you can maximize his value right now. Like, this dude just got promoted to AAA. He's performing. It's just what you have going against you is teams know that he's blocked or that he's not going to be he's not going to be in the Meyer, Teal, Roman Anthony class. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to be a good big league player somewhere. I think he will be. But will he be that on this team? Probably not.
So here's an example of why it's bad to hoard prospects, because at the end you have to make a decision on them, and maybe to your point you get a little bit less for a guy because he's blocked at the big league level.
Sure.
And he has nowhere to go, which is why being decisive as a general manager is the most important, I think, trait you can have to be a good GM, a good baseball executive, a good executive in any sport. Like, kicking the can down the road on decisions, that eventually bites you in the ass. And it is going to bite the Red Sox in the ass with all these guys who have nowhere to play next year if they don't start trading them. So, to me, they're almost forced to start moving guys, Jared. They're almost forced to. It just so happens that this team is also way better than we thought and is worthy of an investment. This is the perfect time to add. Does Craig Breslo feel that way? I want to get your thoughts on that. 617-779-0985. The tribal chief himself is here. We acknowledge him. His name is Jared Carrabis, in for Tony Maz on the Baseball Hour tonight.
particularly left-handed hitting position players, and balancing that out is something that we've been mindful of since I got here 6 months ago. And I think the opportunity to add pitching, whether that is pitching that can impact our major league team immediately, or pitching that we believe has the ability to impact our major league team at some point in the future, is something that we should always be targeting. I don't think anyone would ever claim that they have enough pitching. If we can address short and long-term needs in a single transaction, like, we should absolutely be open to considering that. It's just very, very difficult to execute.
A guy who sounds open to trading some prospects. That's Craig Breslo, which I know flies in the face of the analytics and the nerds, and he doesn't want to trade guys. I don't know. He kind of sounded there like he was willing to trade some guys. We got too many lefties. We need a pitcher. Let's maybe make a deal. That brings me to this question with Jared Carrabis. It's McCarthy, Carrabis, and from Az tonight, we got Jimmy Stewart alongside. Room for you on the phone lines at 617-779-0985. Do you think Craig Breslo wants to be aggressive at this deadline? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is ownership going to hinder him in any way if he does want to be aggressive?
I would say, if you're reading between the lines on what he has said publicly over the last month, that there's a lot of mixed messages here. He has not sounded super enthusiastic about the idea of making a trade. It sounded like up until a week or two ago that he was still evaluating what this team was going to be in the second half. But then Sam Kennedy came out, what was it, a couple weeks ago, and was like, we have no limitations. We're all in. Like, what was the exact quote, Jimmy, the cut that you were dropping, where he had like a one-liner where it was like, he seemed pretty convinced that the Red Sox were going to do something, or that they weren't afraid to. So, yes, there are going to be limitations from ownership. I think we all know that from a financial standpoint. I don't think anything happens. Like, Breslo is not allowed to do anything unless ownership says so.
Without question.
Without question, Jimmy. That's what it was. Without question.
Without question.
That's right. So I that's kind of what I'm looking at. I think it's going to be one of those like 2018 deadlines where there's no huge name that's acquired, but you're going to get a starter. You might get a righty infield bat, I hope. And I'd be happy with that. Like, I'm so far removed from like the spoiled kid on Christmas morning where every trade deadline I need that big shiny toy. I don't. I just need to plug a hole here, plug a hole there, and address the actual needs and keep it moving.
Isn't that kind of disappointing, though? Like, haven't the standards been lowered that you're not expecting more out of the Red Sox? And by the way, because I feel the same way, Jared. If I'm sitting here on August 1st and the Red Sox come away with a back end of the rotation starter and, a platoon right-handed infield bat, first base DH type, I'll be okay with it. I'll say, wow.
Back end guy. Like, if Jack Flaherty comes over, is he a back end guy?
No. If Nate Eovaldi comes over, no.
Those are the names I'm looking at.
I'll even be content with you go out and get a starting pitcher, and you go out and get a right-handed bat. I'll be okay with that because the standards have been lowered. Shouldn't we want more as a Red Sox fan?
Yes, but it's not so much in free agency when the Red Sox didn't spend any big money to add a big caliber player. That was something that I think as a fan base we could look at it and say, well, this isn't the Red Sox that I know. At the trade deadline, if they don't go out and get a big name player, well, now I'm kind of looking at the playoff format. Now I'm blaming, we looked at it this morning. There's 8 teams in contention for the 6th wildcard spot in the National League. Some of them have a losing record. Like, these are teams that should probably look at themselves in the mirror and say, yeah, we're 3.5 games back of a playoff spot, but we do kind of suck. So we should maybe explore some deals that we could possibly make. In the American League, there are some teams that are probably going to look at themselves and say we're sellers, but it's not a long list of teams anymore that come trade deadline time. It's like, we're out of it, so we're going to trade our guys. There's, maybe like 3 or 4 teams in the National League that are going to say, hey, we're selling. That's what the problem is. Like, trust me, I had no problem blaming ownership for their shortcomings. But if the Red Sox don't make this monster trade, it's not because of incompetence or a lack of desire to win. I think it's just the playoff format has really hindered the trade deadline itself.
So the playoff format, no doubt, has decreased activity around the trading deadline, which also raises the prices around the trading deadline because there are not as many players available. There aren't as many teams selling. And, every year, under Chaim Bloom, or the last 2 years under Chaim Bloom, you essentially heard, well, the market really wasn't conducive to making a trade. Yeah, I don't think the market's going to be conducive to making a trade. That's the way it is in baseball this day and age because of the reasons that you just laid out, Jared. There aren't as many true sellers. So the question is, you need to decide whether you're willing to pay a little bit higher of a price to improve your team at the deadline. And I don't want to hear 2-3 weeks from now, well, there are really only, 4 or 5 guys that went, or there are only 4 or 5 guys, teams that were making moves. Yeah, well, you should be one of them. You should be one of those teams trying to improve because this team is a surprise. They are a young group. They are getting better. They are deserving of an investment. And if you have to give up the 8th prospect in your system compared to the 11th prospect in your system, which is where you establish the market being, that's probably worth it. It's probably worth it to improve this team. I don't want to hear the prices were too high. Sorry, I keep hearing that. As a Red Sox fan, you should not accept that answer.
I certainly wouldn't. But I think if I'm Craig Breslo, I want control. I am not looking at rentals. Maybe for the infielder, but if I'm going to give up something good for a starting pitcher, I want them to be here next year. I want them to be a part of what we've got going on moving forward. That's how I would approach it, because when you do give up something of value for a rental, you're saying it's World Series this year. Whereas if I'm going to make this big deal and give up a Nick York in a trade for a pitcher, I want you to be here for when we're really going to go for it, which, we'd like to get to the playoffs this year, but we're really going to go for it next year or in 26 or whatever. And I'm okay with that. I wasn't okay with post Mookie Betts trade, how long it's taken to get to this point, and we're still not exactly where we want to be. But now that we're kind of in this window, I think we're kind of in chapter 2 where we sucked for a little while, and now we're in that we're gaining optimism for the future. This isn't a flash in the pan season, kind of like 21 was, where no one thought that they were going to be any good, but then they went right back to last place for the next 2 years. Now we're in a spot where you can see it. You can see the backbone of what will hopefully be the next championship core. Supplement that with some pieces that are going to be here for when you're actually ready to go.
That's just going to cost you more. And by the way, I'm totally okay with that too. Like if you want to pay a higher prospect capital, to go out and get, a pitcher who's going to be here next year. Yes, I think you should be doing that. Like, this is the time to be aggressive. We just talked about it. Most of your minor leaguers at this point aren't going to have a place to play in a year, so it's time to move them. But so you're completely out on rentals. Like, you would not do that.
I would do a rental for the infielder, but if you're going to go get a starter, I mean, I think Flaherty's on a 1-year deal, right?
I believe he is. What about Evaldi? He's got a vesting option, which I need to look into. He strikes me as so. You would, even if he's a rental, and I need to look into what the detail is on the vesting option. You would take Nate Evaldi. Would you trade, as you just said, Nick York? Would you trade Nick York in a package for Nate Evaldi?
I don't think you'd have to.
You think it's going to be that much lower? Like, Nick York, according to Sox prospects, is not a top 10 prospect in the Red Sox system. So you got to give up something, right?
Sure. I just don't think that you would have to, because now, like, the Rangers are going to... Nate's making, what, like $17 million or something like that?
Yep, $17 million.
So it's not cheap.
So here's the question. Is ownership willing to take on whatever, a little less than half of $17 million is? Is ownership willing to take on... It's going to cost you probably about $8 million to bring in Nate Evaldi.
For Nathan Evaldi, they absolutely should be willing to do that.
Does it help them that Evaldi's a name and you can sell him to the fan base?
Oh my God!
Agree
it would rejuvenate the fan base like nothing that we've seen in the last 5 years.
I agree. What a statement that would be. Evaldi is one of the biggest moves that they could make because you know him. He's a big game pitcher. He's what they need. I don't care if he's a rental. Like, just to bring Evaldi back into the room. To, that's your game 1 playoff starter if you get there, Jared.
And this guy, I mean, he rubs off on everyone in the room. Like, you're talking about Cutter Crawford, Nathan Evaldi, Excuse me, Tanner Houck,
Houck.
Brian Bayo, these dudes that there's no veteran in the room, and that's no disrespect to Nick Pivetta, but there's no like I've been there and done that guy. You need that. Like John Lester, perfect example. He followed around Josh Beckett. Like that was the guy that he followed around and said like this is the guy's work regimen. Nathan Eovaldi's a worker. Like, from everything that I've heard about him, from like Alex Cora, Kevin Plawecki, like he's the guy that everyone looks towards, being like, "Damn, dude, like take it easy. We need you to conserve some energy here." But yeah, in terms of rentals, yes, I would love that.
Would they be interested?
Who's they?
The Red Sox.
They would have to be.
Okay, but yeah, who's they? Craig Breslo. Would he be interested?
Sam Kennedy.
What? Well, you tell me. Would Sam Kennedy be interested?
I would certainly like to think so.
Without question.
Without question, I would think that he would be interested just because they want to get people excited. The diehards are already excited. Like the fans are starting to come back. Fans are excited about the Red Sox.
You should be.
They're trying to get the casuals back, right? Like those are the seat fillers at the end of the day. If you said, "Hey, Nathan Eovaldi's coming home," people would be excited about
You also
that.
go to Sam Kennedy and say, "Hey, Nathan Eovaldi is going to cost you $8 million." You okay with that?
Without question.
I don't buy it. Do you buy it?
I kind of buy it.
You kind of buy it.
I kind of buy it.
How far is kinda?
That it would be a yes, I believe, from Sam Kennedy, and then you'd have to convince John. That's where it gets a little bit difficult.
Can Sam convince John?
He should be able to.
Can Theo?
That's the guy. Can Theo talk to John? Because Theo speaks John Henry.
I need to ask you about Theo Epstein. Let's do that. 617-779-0985. I have a theory. Jimmy Stewart and I kind of worked out a theory last night.
Uh-oh.
You mentioned Craig Breslo has kind of changed his tune. I have something for you. That Mike Felger, it literally shut his brain down yesterday. He could not compute that Craig Breslo did not sound like a nerd. Because Craig Breslo sounded like somebody who wanted to be aggressive and go out and be an old school baseball guy and start trading guys and let's go win. All right? I wonder if Theo got to Breslo. I need to ask you about this after Majori gets us caught up on headlines. Carrabis is here. It's McCarthy and Carrabis in for Maz tonight.
Without question.
Sports Hub headlines.
You have to zoom out a bit and kind of try to see the big picture. And when your team goes on a run, wins 8 games in a row, that has to matter. That has to be meaningful. Again, we're here to try to win as many big league games as we possibly can. Building out a robust, healthy farm system is one path toward sustainability, and we have to be mindful of that. But at the end of the day, we're not here to win farm system rankings. We're here to win big league games.
What is that? That's not Dave Dombrowski. That's Craig Breslo. Screw your playoff numbers, and it's not about the Baseball America rankings. It's about winning big league games.
Jimmy, was that a shot at Hein Bloom? That felt like a shot at Hein Bloom, no?
It definitely felt like that.
Yeah, no, I'll admit it. That's a shot at Hein Bloom.
You're right, Jared.
Yep. And it's a deserved and rightful shot at Hein Bloom. Jared Carrabis alongside, Jimmy Stewart producing, Matt McCarthy in for Tony Maz tonight. You said that Breslo's kind of been back and forth over the last month. There have been a lot of comments that have felt a little different than the next. It's been hard to kind of pin down where he is on the trading deadline. That was on the 310 to Left podcast with Tom Caron and Alex Spear.
Tyler Milliken's favorite podcast, by the way.
Not Section 10?
No, he's a 310 to Left guy.
He doesn't like Section 10.
Not particularly, no.
That feels like a suspendable offense.
Oh, he's getting suspended right off the bat tonight for not hitting a single home run in the home run derby. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. Kind of embarrassing.
Very embarrassing.
How far were you guys trying to hit it?
I think the fence was 75 feet or something like that.
So wiffle ball? What's the deal?
Wiffle ball, yeah.
He couldn't hit it.
Nope, not one.
He couldn't get it out of the infield.
That's tough. Tough moment.
You know what's tough?
Launch angle.
Tyler was sick, and it was 106 degrees on the field, and he took 19 rounds of BP before the Derby, and this is like a non-athletic person.
Sure. Yeah.
So the fact that it was in the sun taking 4 hours worth of BP before the Derby, it's not that he couldn't hit a home run. He hit them in BP, but he was
He was
punched
gassed.
himself out.
Yes, he did.
He was gassed.
Bad strategy.
Did you give him the Vortex power bat?
We tried to.
Yeah.
We gave him every opportunity to hit a home run. He just couldn't do it.
Tough.
So
tough
2
moment.
suspensions right off the bat for Tyler.
That's correct.
Is he righty?
He's a righty.
Okay.
Maybe he's lefty and he just doesn't know.
No. What I'm saying is the Red Sox need a right-handed power bat, so we're going to rule out Tyler Milliken in this scenario.
Wouldn't wish Tyler Milliken on the Red Sox, are my worst enemy.
Can he pitch, though?
No.
Can't handle. Listen, handling a wiffle ball. Not everybody is the Saugus Rocket.
That's right.
And can handle the wiffle ball.
I'm retired. I can't do it no more.
That happens when you get older, Jared. You and I are about the same age. It starts to break down.
I'm broken down.
Breaks down real fast.
Yeah.
Real fast.
Yeah.
But Craig Breslo sounded like a guy who wants to go out and add. And I had a thought last night. It's like, why has he kind of changed his tune? As you pointed out, he's been changing his tune a little bit over the last month. That was like as, old school baseball. Yeah, I'm going to trade my prospects because screw them and screw your playoff rankings. And, I'm going to build the best team possible. That was Dave Dombrowski-esque. Who got to him? That's what I want to know. Did Theo Epstein get to him? I have this working
Without
theory.
question.
Thank you, Jimmy. And thank you, Sam. I hope you stay far away from this. How much of an influence does Theo Epstein have right now with Craig Breslo and with this organization when it comes to baseball?
It feels like a nice fan fiction fantasy thing that Theo comes home and he gets in Breslo's ear and he says, hey, this is how I approached it. So I had some success doing it. If you want to do it the right way, here's how it's done. I think what probably happened is just Sam came out and gave a public thumbs up to, let's do something at the trade deadline. And then Breslo was like, all right. I mean, that wasn't communicated to me. So now I can start talking like I want to do something. Because before, he was probably just verbally tiptoeing around, not knowing what ownership thought about adding at the trade deadline. And I think Breslo did 2 interviews. There's one with Catillo, one on the Nesson broadcast where he was very non-committal to adding at the trade deadline, saying we were still evaluating. The backlash was, what are you looking at? I mean, the team is currently in a playoff spot and you're not sure if you're going to add to this, which made all the sense in the world. For all the anti-nerd stuff that Felger says, he's 100% right. When you're talking about a baseball team that's holding a playoff spot, but you're still looking at the playoff odds, statistically, this is what our odds are. Well, guess what will improve those odds? If you go out and add good players at the trade deadline. So I think that narrative probably led to Sam Kennedy coming out and saying, yeah, like without question, we are going to add if the right deal presents itself. Because the whole quote was like, without question, we can do this. We have the capability to. We have the willingness to. But we still have to find a trade partner. We still have to be willing to part with said players in exchange for said players. There was a caveat to it, but that's what I think it was.
They have to find the right deal. That was the caveat. That was the asterisk.
Yeah.
So that's the out.
That's the out.
The right deal wasn't there. The prices were too high. That's why we couldn't make a deal.
I will not accept
coming to a radio microphone near you August 1st.
Yep.
I think you have to accept it, though.
No, I don't.
I don't accept it.
After the full throttle comment, Sam Kennedy can't come out and say, I'm pounding the table. We are adding it to trade. Like, he can't say that. Because then what if all the teams, because we just talked about how many teams are going to be sellers. Let's just throw a number at 6 teams. 7 teams are going to be sellers. What if the asking price is so outrageous that it's like, all right, well, we're not doing that. We're not going to mortgage the future to add a rental starting pitcher. We're not going to trade Roman Anthony for a guy that's on a contract for the end of the year. It's like, yeah, I 100% agree with that. I'm not going to do that either. So he can't guarantee it, but he can say we have the bandwidth to do it and we have the desire to do it. Sure.
Who are your untouchables? And I know that's a nuance, there's nuance that goes into that. I would trade this guy for, somebody with term. I would not trade this guy
really
for
only
a
Roman
rental.
Anthony.
Roman Anthony is your only untouchable.
Yeah, I would have a very hard time trading Meyer or Teal. Like, you'd have to give me the name of like an absolute stud. But Roman Anthony's going nowhere. And if Meyer's getting traded, you better be getting a stud that's under several years of control.
Let me ask you this. Is that your opinion? Or is that informed opinion on Roman Anthony? Or is this your opinion based on things you've heard from people in positions of power or positions of knowledge in the organization on Roman Anthony?
So I'll say this. I have no relationship with Craig Breslo. He is 1 degree of separation away. It seems like everyone that I know knows him, but I do not. I've walked past him one time at Fenway, just gave him the head nod, and he gave it back, and that was it. I have no idea. I've never talked to him. That was what was great about Chaim Bloom, is he was just very transparent. Like, if you had a question, you could go to him, run stuff by him. He was, there would be nights where we were talking on the phone for like almost an hour, and it's like, it wasn't like an info dump. It would be more like, I need perspective on this.
Wait a minute. You were talking with Chaim Bloom on the phone for an hour on certain nights? Mm-hmm. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. You hang up first time.
He was
no, Jared, you hang up.
It was like that. I mean, like, he was very, very transparent with his line of thinking. Like, if I have the same kind of relationship with Cora, where it's like, all right, well, why did you do this? Or what was the line of thinking here? And you would just get an explanation. With Breslo, I can't even really say that I've quote unquote met him. So I don't know what his line of thinking is on a lot of things. I don't know. By all accounts, it sounds like he's being handcuffed the same way that Chaim was from ownership. Like, if you wanted to pull off some big trade, you would still need the thumbs up from John Henry at the end of the day. I think Theo is a guy that he came in, he's like, hey, we're doing this. Like, he told them what we were doing.
Right.
It's not that way anymore.
Interesting stuff there from Jared Carrabis, 617-779-0985. I do want to respond to just one of your opinions on who you would trade and who you would get rid of. I think you are spot on, and I will tell you why next. It's McCarthy, Carrabis, Stu, in for Maz tonight on the Baseball Hour. Carrabis and I just did our segment in the break. I mean, you want to talk this, Jimmy? If you could have been in here for this was like nerd out baseball. Let's talk about the differences of Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, and Kyle Teal.
One's good and one isn't.
Every break that we've had, we've just continued the show, basically. You just have missed it.
Yeah, it's been better, frankly, to all you folks out there. No, you've actually missed the good show. It's been fine. Carrabis has been good. I've been average. Stu's been good, all that. But no, the off-air show.
Average is not how I would describe Jared Carrabis.
No, I said I've been average. I said Jared Carrabis, you guys have been good.
Like Bully Ray, you mean?
You are not an average athlete, sir.
Thank you. Just asking.
He has the makings of a varsity athlete, let me tell you. You're a Sopranos guy?
I started Sopranos, never finished it. It's not because it's not because I didn't want to. It was when I was like working this very tedious job. We watched it at work, and then I quit that job, and that was it. If I had continued to work there, then I would have continued to watch the show.
Right. If you continue being employed to watch The Sopranos, you would have. Yes,
correct.
So, okay, well, check that out.
I'm on it.
All
That's
right.
my off-season assignment.
Yeah, Tony Soprano had the makings of a varsity athlete, who has the makings of a legitimate star for the Red Sox for years to come. This is how we decide if a general manager is good or bad at his job. They have three big prospects: Kyle Teal, Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer. You said Anthony's your untouchable.
Yep.
Why?
It's obviously ability, but then going down there, talking to we didn't get to interview Teal, but talking to Roman Anthony, the conversation that we had with him specifically, I came away from it thinking he has it. He has the makeup, he has the character, he has the mindset of a staple, a superstar. And I think that goes a long way in a market like Boston. We can talk ability and all that, but at the All-Star game, he put on a show. Like, I feel like he put himself. Obviously, he's on the radar of Red Sox fans, but I think he put himself on the radar of baseball fans, where it's like, oh, who's this Roman Anthony kid? Then you start reading up on him. You're like, oh, he's the top prospect in the Red Sox system. A lot of hype around the Red Sox system. All of it for position players for the most part.
For the whole part.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Penrod is their top pitching prospect, and he was in Indy ball last year, and he's 27. So, yeah, you look at a guy like Roman Anthony, the best prospect in one of the most highly ranked systems, and that's where you come away from it saying he's the real deal. He's the total package. He has the ability, and he has the makeup. And that's where I look at a guy and say, that's my untouchable. That's no disrespect to someone like Meyer, Teal. Like, I want all of them to stay here. If you could find a way to get those three guys, because I think ultimately, if you're a Red Sox fan right now that is still watching and consuming Red Sox baseball through the dark times, which, things are better right now, but for the first 2 months, we were 500. Last 2 years, we were 500 last place. If you're still watching, a lot of us, the reason why we're watching is it's the same reason why when a team in the playoffs gets eliminated and you see those stars on the top step of the dugout watching the other team celebrate. As a fan, that's what you're doing metaphorically. You're on the top step of the dugout watching the other team celebrate because you want to remember the tough times. It makes the championship days that much more enjoyable rather than just popping in whenever the Red Sox are good. I'm watching all these awful seasons and being like, yeah, I can't wait to win again. And when we win again, I want it to be because Teal, Meyer, and Roman Anthony are up here and being a part of it. Look at Jaren Duran winning the All-Star Game MVP. How cool was that? Because he's a guy that came up through the Red Sox system. If it was a rental player or just someone that was here, like when Kenley Jansen was our lone All-Star last year, it felt like no Red Sox made the All-Star team. Jaren Duran, completely different story. I want all three of them to be here, but Roman's my one untouchable.
I don't think you should keep all three. I think you should keep 2 out of the 3. Look at what Dave Dombrowski did. You traded Moncada for Chris Sale. You find that version of that deal out there. Maybe it's not at this deadline, but this offseason. You find a young, cost-controlled pitcher who you can build around because you don't have that. You pick the right guy to keep, though. Anthony's the right guy to keep because he has a higher upside than Meyer, and he hits for more power. The guys I'm keeping, again, in a vacuum, I want to keep all 3. But if there's a deal to be made for a pitcher who can anchor your rotation for years, Jared, because you don't have that guy right now, if there's a deal to be made, Meyer's the guy I'm trading because he doesn't have the power. Anthony has more power. I think Meyer's an everyday regular, and that's a good thing. I think Anthony has an opportunity to be something more, and Teal too as a catcher. So just my take on that. It's been fun, Carrabis.
It's always fun.
Let's do this again.
I would love to.
Jimmy Stewart, Kevin Majori, thanks as always for your hard work today. I'm back tomorrow. Milliken will be on the Baseball Hour tonight. You get Carrabis